Yeah, go for it. We started off with this mess, basically, which was a legacy system that had been knocking around for 15, 20 years from early adoption of internet at Lancaster University. And, well, things progressed.
Yeah, basically we had one big mail store box and people could get to it in a million ways, because every time somebody said, "Ooh, I'd like to do this," people said, "All right, whatever." And it was a bad idea. Okay, so.
Who doesn't know about Mbox?
Anyone else? Oh, fantastic. Okay.
Right. Well, Mbox is an antiquated format. Basically, involves having all of your messages in one big long file. So you've got the header, the information, the body of the message, and then next, etc. So you end up with this massive file, which we had a 50 megabyte file system quota. So you end up with a 50 megabyte single file, which means that across your system of 16,000 mailboxes, a single mail shot means you have to back up your entire mail store every night because the incremental can't just extract that one message. So it's horrendous. It also suffers with truncation and corruption issues because the users have direct access to these files too via NFS mounts and things. So we have a lot of problems with it. And then things got slightly worse. We didn't believe it could happen, but we had a system load of 500 plus.
It's great.
It was using greater than 100% disk I/O, which we're not sure how that happened. And surprisingly enough, the system started to become really slow and unresponsive.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought it?
Used to freeze up about 3 o'clock every afternoon, which was about peak user time. But yeah, so we saw the system load hit above 500 according to Top, I think.
And graphs showed it as well.
But then it just stopped outputting anything there. Just went on. Yeah, so we bought a big fat disk array and shoved all the mailboxes on it, and this dropped the disk I/O to about 40%, 50%, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. Right, so.
As I mentioned, the incremental backups were in the region of 110 gig a day prior to the work we're about to discuss. And obviously, we used to have the undergraduate office were very keen on mailing out their users, the entire undergraduate population, which are the main users of this system, resulting in the whole thing being changed. So it was massive. Our user services department was saying 50 megabyte, that's not enough, we can get a gig at Google, and various comments along those lines. So we were up against the wall to actually try and do something about scaling the system to give users more capacity, and basically our guy looked after the take backup system and said, no way, not going to happen. So, and obviously the other issue that we had was we said, actually, this is all our eggs in one basket, we've only got a single system here. So how do we scale it sideways as well? And we decided that NFS mounting with SSH access and all a host of other problems was a really bad idea. And all we needed to do was just kind of be a little bit more concentrated. The other major problem we had was that user perception of the system was going downhill rapidly, and we were facing calls to outsource it to Google or shift it to Exchange or whatever. So we had to do something, we had to do something fast. So,
before they found the £250,000 to buy Exchange.
At least.
So yeah, the idea was that we were going to convert to using MailDeer instead because it's great, basically. It has one file per message. It's got this whole fantastic atomic mechanism where you basically, it's all based on the Unix file system, and it comes from DJB. And I don't like him, but MailDeer is great. The whole idea is that basically you sort of link messages between two places at once using the hard link stuff from the Unix file system, and it means that you can't possibly mess it up. It's even safe to log over NFS. Yeah, it also means that your backups become massively cheap. However, to do this, we had the following working limitations. Basically, all of our user mail is totally locked up and we can't look at it. So we're operating on a black box where we can't actually look at the data. We'll have to look at the headers of messages, but we can't ever look at the bodies without going through 3 layers of management and getting them all to sign pieces of paper. We had to do it without actually disrupting the service at all during term time. We had to log everything we were doing, not lose any messages, and basically bail out if there was ever a problem doing anything. So, yeah, it was quite
interesting.
Yeah. It was this interesting thing of writing programs to work with data that's sort of one step removed. So, there's a rough summary. Yeah, basically, we had issues, the following issues: 16,000 users. We had people using We had people using Mail. One person was still using
Mail.
Yeah. No,
It's a senior physics professor who was very high within the university, had been there for 30 years, and didn't see why he should have to change his mail client now.
It was incredible.
So that was a challenge.
We had 60 users using ProcMail, but by now they all had their own machines, so we decided just to get rid of ProcMail because it was a better plan. We also had users storing all sorts of files in their mail quota.
In days of yore, when I first started at Lancaster, I think we had 100k central Unix or 1 meg central Unix. I think we had 1 meg because we were computing students, which was extra. So the standard quota was 100k, so they allocated something like 50 meg on the mail store, so people used to store their files in the mail store because there was more quota there.
And compiled in the mail store.
Yeah, that was always
Right, so off-the-shelf tools we used primarily were Exim and Dovecot. We used Exim because, frankly, we use Exim everywhere else in the university. It supports Mbox and Maildir, which means we can have it do deliveries to both types. And Ian here knows everything about it.
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay. And we picked Dovecot from our range of options, primarily because it supports Mbox and Maildir.
At the same time?
Yes.
Interesting. Which is actually unusual in that a lot will support Mbox or Mdir, but there weren't any we came across that would support both at the same time. So it was an interesting kind of one or the other.
Okay, so custom development. Basically, we built 3 main tools. There was a program we found called Simple Maildir, which was GPL, and basically we rewrote it from the ground up to become complex Maildir because we wanted it to be have a lot more attention to detail. We wrote a program called SpiffyDiff, which allows you to diff 2 mail sources. We wrapped it all up with a migration wrapper, which does all the checking, locking, logging, cleanup, and then we rewrote a few other bits and bobs here and there, which we can do later. Right, so preparation work. Firstly, we switched off ProcMail because it was irritating us endlessly, and it's very easy to write mail loops in it.
More specifically, one of the main reasons for ditching ProcMail was that there were approximately 60 users with ProcMail RC files, and we said, do you know what, we're not going to go in and try and rewrite those to use Maildir. And also the other issue was that it would involve the users who are using those understanding that they would need to completely rewrite their ProcMail RC file in future to use Maildir, because even though you configure ProcMail to use Maildir for delivery, you can still tell ProcMail in your ProcMail RC file to commute to an Mbox. So we could end up with a situation where the users reconfigure their ProcMail RC file and they can't access their mail. So we decided that as it was only 60 users in a population of 16,000, that whilst it wasn't a nice thing to do, we just said tough. Everybody else is managing filtering all clients, so you'll have to do the same. There were 1 or 2 complaints, but on the whole it's
fine. We're all just using ProcMail on our machines. Yeah. We switched off SSH access. There was a whole issue with clients doing mostly SSH. You need them to get to the IMAPD over a socket or
it was using SSH keys from the central Unix interactive Unix service. SSH keys and trusted hosts, basically, to go from one machine to the other without password, so that they can tunnel over SSH to access the mailbox without entering a password.
But yeah,
it's very simple stuff.
We ditched all that. We press on screen at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so Exim.
For Exim, we did 2 things. We added a router for mailbox locking, which basically allowed us to say, don't deliver to this mailbox, delayed message on the queue, because we're working on the mailbox. And then we also added a Maildir++ router, which basically checked for the existence of a file and then delivered to Maildir if the file existed. So, or directory rather. So
Okay, Dovecot.
Pretty much the same. Dovecot had this wonderful option called mail executable configuration, and you can run a script from it. So from that script, we checked for mailbox locking, then we checked for the existence of the relevant file, and then determined from that whether they were using the inbox melder or whether they couldn't access the mailbox because it was locked. So we ended up with you could access both at the same time depending on per user. So.
Very good. Okay, so complex Maildir. Yeah, basically this allows you to convert an inbox file into Maildir. It does all sorts of verification checks on headers, and you configure how many good headers you want, stuff like date, from, message ID. It skips over truncated messages, of which there were a few, which were just a few headers and nothing else. It removes the whole University of Washington folder data, and it sorts out message flags. Basically, Pine and all sorts of inbox things store whether a message is read or replied to, or all that sort of stuff in a status header. Maildir stores in the file name. There's no clear convention on how the letters match up in many ways. SpiffyDiff is excellent. It was named by one of our team who decided that MailDiff, or whatever we called it originally, wasn't good enough. Basically, you can have two inboxes, or a Maildir and inbox, or two Maildirs, or whatever, and it will basically tell you what the difference is between those two sources of mail. So we use this after conversion. It deals with all sorts of weird inbox formatting stuff, and it's quite surreal. Okay, so before converting stuff, we made sure to go through everything. Basically, we had a limit on the number of locked or failed users, so that should something be going wrong in the conversion, it wouldn't just lock everybody and then say, "Oh, sorry, please undo that."
We thought that was bad.
Yeah, we checked if these were being converted. We checked if there was enough file space, which is an important layer. Checked they're not quota, made sure it was only inboxes, and made sure they weren't logged in. So basically, we only did the conversions if they weren't logged in. And Lancaster University uses it batched up into 60 numerical folders on all the file stores. So basically, we were doing a batch of those per time, and anyone who was logged in would come back and do them later. So there wasn't any interruption to the current service, and the locking for the conversion only took about a minute or 2 minutes per user, if that. So basically, locked them out for about a minute, and then they were back in, and everything was fine.
Most people didn't even notice the change.
So conversion. Yeah, we started off by increasing their quota because Maildir is substantially bigger than Inbox. We locked it all up, backed it up, and then did the conversion. Essentially what we did was we moved the data elsewhere and actually recreated their entire home directory to make sure it was absolutely pristine and there was nothing left over, which made our lives much easier. Okay, so post-conversion.
Email the user with a little notice saying, "Your mailbox has been converted. If you've got any problems, please contact us." And we didn't have one complaint.
No, that's good.
Not a single one. So we also checked quota utilisation, which, as Paul said, we'll come back to. We logged absolutely everything to the nth degree. We went looking to try and work out what the average message size was and maximum message size was earlier. But there were the log files were consuming so much space on disk that I'd actually deleted them. So, because this happened last year now. So, and then we maintained per user. So if there was a specific user problem, we had in the user's home directory a log for that user. So we didn't have to trawl the main logs for them, but we had the main logs as well, so that we had a graphable source for information.
Great. Okay, so the problems we found along the way. Maildir is about a third bigger than Inbox, and this is due to the fact that each message is, of course, a single file, and thus you incur the 4 kilobyte block size of a limit on your file system. You can tone it down a little bit by tuning your file system, but you still end up consuming more space, whatever you do, basically, because there's an awful lot of small email around. We ran into some issues with Red Hat 8 specifically to do with their file system, which we couldn't reproduce on any other machine ever. It was just weird.
So whilst we gave the users a double increase in quota, because they had twice the increase in quota, they didn't really get anything. But it was a good marketing.
We totally got more than did. We did find a bug in Perl where we compared, basically originally SpiffyDiff, instead of using external diff programs, instead of using external diff programs, just used Perl string comparison because we had We've got loads of memory. Just splat the bodies of each male into a scalar and just say, are these two equal? Because we don't care, it'll be faster. But actually, we found a situation where Perl said that they weren't equal and Diff said that they were, and we tried checking as much as we could, and we thought that Perl was wrong. But we can't either confirm or deny because we don't have that male.
We don't have, we could look at the data to investigate it. So.
We could rely on our programs checksumming it, counting it, looking at it, sorting it in every way, but we couldn't read it with our own eyeballs, which stuffed us up. We also had some persistent connections. Oh yeah, the Perl string thing. Helping suggested it was an encoding issue, where somehow we were reading one in UTF-8 and reading one in local encoding, and thus they weren't being counted as equal, but I'm not that familiar with Perl's encoding. That was just a suggestion we had. Yeah, we had some issues with people who had clients basically just had IMAP connections running forever and refused to disconnect. So eventually we just booted them all at 4 o'clock in the morning.
But it was a final last resort.
Yeah, there were about 5 of them.
We'd gone, what, maybe 6 weeks or something. We converted the vast majority of the users and there was a very, very small number left, somewhere in the region of 20, something like that. And it was only then that we started booting people off and actually affecting their servers. But the client reconnected. As soon as you boot the client, it reconnected anyway. So
Ready to lock it out.
yeah.
We also had a small number of messages which were a bit crap. Basically, we had all this header checking because we were told, you know, oh yes, when Exchange converts between blah and blah, it accounts for 3 good headers. So we thought we'll side that 4. But there are actually some legitimate old messages in people's message stores. If you're ever doing anything like this, be aware that people keep email forever. You know, so 15-year-old messages with just 2 headers.
As I said, I think the oldest we saw was, obviously we had access to the headers. I think we saw messages from the early 90s.
Yeah.
So
Really, really short time.
Sorry, go on.
Right, so backup size before was 180 versus 110 incremental, and afterwards we did a backup in 450. Oh god! But it's only 10 gig a day, which is a fantastic win.
Yeah.
And our backup man is very happy. It means we can keep longer encrypted backups and it's easier to find things. Okay, so we did 15,619 users, 106,900 into inbox files, 7.5 million messages, all with basically no downtime, which was quite impressive. Really. Oh yeah, we also wrote some other crap, which is all available in the lobby for Drupal. Questions?
Oh, the one other issue we had was POP3, which I realised.
Oh.
POP3 clients saw all of the messages as new.
Oh yeah.
And pulled all them out there again, which was a bit of a...
We decided we didn't care.
It was a small enough number of users that whilst they were mightily upset, we just said, yeah, suck it up.
It's to do with the way that Dovecot and the flags on the mail were interacting, because mail flags were weird.
It wasn't ideal, though. So, questions? Yeah.
I do have to ask, you say you didn't get a single complaint through to the complaint line you set up. Is there a possibility that there might be something to do with the fact that you provided the complaint line information via an email?
No, possible. It's also on people's desktops and on posters in labs and everywhere. You can't miss that and get on the service desk.
Yeah. So there was quite a lot of information.
People will complain when they can't.
I know. If they couldn't get a mail, they would have gone in to say, we can't get a mail, and at which point the service desk would have said, clearly it's all down to your conversion, because that's what you're doing at the moment. Clearly everything that goes wrong is down to that.
Yeah, I bet none of them ever actually made any of the notices.
Possibly not. But some 6 months on, I'm not seeing any problems.
Yeah.
So, cheers.
So I'm coming here from a business perspective, probably the only coder in here, non-coder in here as well. So I'm just curious because when you were talking about it before, and I immediately thought I could see a kind of management pressure when they say for Exchange, which is just put to one side for obvious reasons. But for something like Google Maps, I know it's a strong thing that they're going after educational institutions. So how did you? I mean, can you talk about costs? I mean, how much were you able to how did you find that, I guess?
When we did the conversion, I did a back of the envelope calculation, and we came up with a figure of about 50 pence per user for 16,000 mailboxes. When we did the back of the envelope figure for Exchange, it came out about £25 per user. So there's an order of
was Google Apps, whatever it is.
I didn't. It's still an ongoing issue. The outsourcing issue is still we're still being pressured with that. So sadly we're out of time.
Yeah.